Speaking of Governor John Hickenlooper in the governor's race, Governor John Hickenlooper will join 4 other governors as they testify before a U.S. Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions on September 7th. Meanwhile, Hickenlooper continues to work with Republican Ohio Governor John Kasich on a bipartisan plan to sustain insurance markets, which is stoking rumors that a 2020 presidential ticket is in the works. Patty, we love to talk about stuff like this, especially something as historic that would be a Republican governor and Democratic governor coming together in 2020. I know the odds are long, but it's fun to talk about, right?
Oh, it's fun to talk about, and it would be very fun to see. So as we're taping this show, the rumors are starting. CNN just reported it, according to a source a couple hours ago, that Kasich and Hickenlooper are seriously looking at a run together for president and vice president in 2010 under the Unity Party. Now, the two of them have already been together talking about health care. Back in June, they went to Washington, D.C., and they said, governors are the ones who can bring people together. We can help bring people together. So they've been talking about this for a couple months now together. I have to say, if Penn's assessment of the non-bigoted, free speech-loving Americans is accurate, these guys actually might have a chance on the Unity ticket. And I've got to say, I think it makes more sense for Hickenlooper to be the running mate of John Kasich than of Al Franken. You might have heard the Frankenlooper thing that was floated a little earlier this summer. I think this would be a really great race to watch. And what does Hickenlooper have to lose? He will be done. He'll be term limited as governor. He's got money. He's got connections. He can do almost anything he wants. He's got nothing to lose by running for Veep.
David, 2020 imagination aside, what do you make of John Hickenlooper's status in being called to the U.S. Senate for this committee hearing? Is this a big deal?
Yeah, and Hickenlooper and Kasich actually are similar on the Obamacare thing, because both of them, unilaterally did the doubling of Medicaid in their states. In Ohio, after the legislature had actually enacted legislation that thought forbade Kasich from doing that, and he just went ahead and did it anyway, and Hickenlooper did the same, both extremely fiscally irresponsible. And what they're testifying for is to the euphemism, sustain insurance markets. Bailouts for the insurance companies. Obamacare is premised on an impossible model, which is you're going to get people to buy literally things like a $3,000 a month policy with a $14,000 deductible. So you throw in $50,000 before you get a penny back, other than you get a free checkup and maybe some new eyeglasses. And that ridiculous price is supposed to subsidize the insurance companies in providing care, in providing low-cost, actuarially unsound insurance to people for whom insurance would be more expensive if, like you do on all kinds of other insurance, you take into account the risk. You know, somebody who's 57 years old and has diabetes and is morbidly obese can't be priced appropriately in the insurance market, and the chumps who pay $50,000 a year for nothing are subsidizing that. And so the Hickenlooper Kasich plan is, let's throw more bad money after good and bail out the insurance companies for participating in this unsustainable Rube Goldberg con game. But as presidential candidates, I agree, could be very strong. We tend to go to the opposite of what's been annoying us most. Carter was weak. Nixon was dishonest. Carter said, "I'll never lie to you." Carter was weak. Reagan was strong and knew what he thought. H.W. Bush was out of touch. Bill Clinton was an emotional vampire who could understand your emotions and play them back to you and feel them more sincerely than you did. And after the messianic Obama and Trump with his raging id all over the place, the fact that Hickenlooper and Kasich are kind of boring and low-key, and whatever personality flaws they have, they yell at their staff too much, they keep it inside. They're not always acting it out in public. And in public, they have this very affable, friendly, calm personas. So I think that especially if the Democrats do what they'll probably do, which is nominate somebody at least as far left as Bernie, but without his grandfatherly demeanor to take some of the edge off that, I think a lot of the people in the country could be brave for somebody who's centrist and boring.
Eric, centrist and boring, nice guys, Unity Party, whatever you think. Do Kasich and Hickenlooper have a realistic avenue here?
Yeah, they probably have an avenue, but you need to put a bunch of asterisks on this. Asterisk number one is we're sitting here in late August in the doldrums of summer where all kinds of news bubbles up when there's nothing else to report, although Trump solved that problem. We're sitting here 3+ years ahead of an election. Can you add up how many news cycles that is in this day and age? And so we have to see if this is just a momentary bubble, something to talk about in a couple of news cycles, or if this is something that has legs. Some of David's analysis, I won't go into the healthcare piece, but David's analysis of politics being action, reaction, counter-reaction is dead on the mark. And you could see whether it's Kasich and Hickenlooper or some other ticket, as both parties drift to their polls, further polarized, leaving a vast middle that is just completely turned off by this game. Somebody could step into that void. Whether that somebody is John Kasich and John Hickenlooper remains to be seen. Donald Trump, to my mind, was elected president as the complete outsider. He was basically an independent candidate, but instead of running as an independent, he ran as an independent within a party and took over that party. You could see such a scenario playing out because of people's complete disgust and distaste with the political system. Last point, the problem I think Kasich and Hickenlooper have is that lots of people like us, and probably like a lot of our viewers, sit around and say, what this country needs is a fiscally conservative, socially moderate president. And Donald Trump went out and mobilized exactly the opposite constituency. His constituency is a fiscally fairly liberal constituency. They want all their government benefits, don't care about deficit, debt, entitlements, or any of that, but are socially very conservative. And what we're going to see is a battle to see, is that fiscally conservative, socially moderate constituency bigger, or is the opposite bigger?
Penn, what to choose from here, but when you see something like this, and Eric's right, we are over 3 years out from a presidential election, so this is clearly the doldrums of August and people waiting for football season to start. So what are your thoughts on what we've seen from possible Kasich-Hickenlooper rumors?
You know, I come at it from the opposite perspective. I want to deal with substance first.
There's no place for that in this show, Penn. We talked about that.
The whole reason this story started is because they are among a group of 6 governors going to speak in front of a committee of Congress. And the committee is looking at what to do with insurance markets, and in many respects, this is a solution in search of a problem. If you saw the New York Times today, we've now reached a point under the Affordable Care Act where there is not a single county left in this country that won't have some insurer providing benefits. May not be the best program in the world, but it's now reported every county in this country has a provider, which is the opposite of what President Trump promised us and sort of implied he would work to make sure even became worse to try to dry up the market. And so what you've got is a U.S. Congress that really can't get anything right. You know, after 7 years of talking about repeal and replace, they couldn't get that done because fundamentally and astonishingly, after 7 years, they had never sat down and come up with a comprehensive replacement strategy. And I'm kind of scared if there's a group of folks who've had 7 years where they agree on a problem but can't come up with any answer. And that's what they had. Then they said, well, let's just repeal it because the president said repeal it and blow everything up. They couldn't even get that right either. And so while these governors may come to them and, you know, let's face it, what they're going to do is plead and say, look, don't mess up our states because you can't figure out anything. Worst case scenario, let's continue to let the Affordable Care Act, which is the same thing as Obamacare for our watchers, continue and let the states try to figure this out. And then if you can get your acts together, then let's talk about a comprehensive national retooling of the program so that we get a better and a different result. And if that's the context, and if that's what happens, I don't know if there's a substantive path forward for Kasich, Hickenlooper, or any other combination like that, because Congress has the ability to take all of the air out of the room by tinkering with and ending this debate, because this is only the only policy issue they're running on at this point.